Chains of starlight, the ion thrusters of the mercenary vessel, pulsed with malevolent energy as Talon Boris watched his research ship's wreckage scatter across the void. 3 years of xenobotanical studies lost to space pirates who saw humans as nothing more than valuable cargo. His wrists burned from the molecular restraints as the Captina reptilian Draxian, scales that shimmered like oil on water, catalogued him with cold efficiency. Human male. Scientific background? Minimal combat training. Prime condition. The Draxian's forked tongue flicked between razor teeth. Should fetch a decent price at the Nexus auctions? Talon had heard stories of the Nexuson asteroid belt transformed into an interstellar black market where the Galactic Confederation's laws held no sway. For 2 lunar cycles, he was kept in a stasis pod, awakened only for the minimal sustenance required to keep his body functioning. When the auction day arrived, he stood on a platform under harsh lights that made his skin appear sickly pale as buyers from a dozen systems assessed his value with dispassionate eyes. Next offering, Terran male. Suitable for labor, research assistance, or companionship, the auctioneer announced. The translator implanted Talon's ear, converting the guttural language to standard English. Bidding begins at 5,000 credits. The auction proceeded with methodical cruelty until a hush fell over the crowd. A slender figure moved toward the front, and even the hardened mercenaries stepped aside with deference. Talon squinted against the glare to see a woman, no, not human, approaching the platform. Her skin was a deep violet that seemed to absorb the harsh lights, offset by luminous eyes the color of distant nebulae. She wore robes of iridescent material that shifted colors with her graceful movements, and a complex silver circlet adorned her head. 15,000, she said. Her voice melodic yet commanding. No one countered her bid. Sold to Lady Viera of the Stellaris Collective, the auctioneer declared. After the transaction, Talon was led to a private docking bay, where an elegant vessel awaited. Unlike the brutal efficiency of mercenary ships, its craft exhibited an organic design aesthetic, with flowing lines and crystalline viewports. Inside, the air carried a subtle fragrance like night-blooming flowers. "You will address me as Vera," she said once they were alone in the ship's main cabin. "Not mistress, not lady, just Vera." Talon studied her, noting the delicate ridges along her temples and the way her fingers 5 on each hand. Just like a human's, moved with precise grace as she removed her outer robe. "Why me?" he asked, voice rough from disuse. Vera's gaze traveled over him. It's not with the lecherous assessment he'd feared, but with something more complex, curiosity perhaps, or recognition. "Your data file indicated botanical research experience. I have need of such skills." As the ship broke orbit, Talon glimpsed his reflection in a polished surface, gaunt, bearded eyes haunted. Beside him stood Vera, regal and mysterious. In that moment, he realized she carried a similar haunting in her eyes. Though better concealed, their journey lasted 3 days through hyperspace, during which Vera spoke little but provided him with clean quarters, proper nutrition, and medical treatment for his wounds. On the final day, as they approached a solitary planet orbiting a binary star system, she joined him in the observation deck. "Strelin," she said, gesturing toward the approaching world with its swirling azure atmosphere and twin rings of crystalline debris. "My sanctuary, my prison." "You're in exile," Talon observed, the pieces falling into place. A shadow passed across Vera's face. "We all wear chains of some kind, Talon. Mine are simply less visible than yours." She touched the control panel, and his restraints deactivated, falling away from his wrists. "On Astralan, you'll serve as my research assistant and caretaker for my botanical collection. Serve well, and your existence will be comfortable." As they descended toward a sprawling compound nestled between violet mountains and iridescent forests, Talon watched Vera's profile, proud yet weary, powerful yet isolated. He had been captured, sold, and purchased, his freedom stripped away by forces beyond his control. Yet as Vera turned to meet his gaze, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of shared solitude that transcended their roles as owner and possession. "We land in 5 minutes, she said, her voice softer than before. "Welcome to your new home, Talon of Earth." The word home echoed strangely in his mind as the ship breached the atmosphere, descending toward uncertain fate on this distant world. Bound to this enigmatic woman whose eyes held secrets as vast as the space between stars? Whispers of trust, the biodomes of Australian stretched beneath a sky painted with the light of twin suns, one amber, one pale blue, their combined radiance creating an ethereal twilight that never fully yielded to darkness. After 2 lunar cycles in Vera's compound, Talan had developed a rhythm to his days. Mornings spent tending the vast collection of extraterrestrial flora, afternoons cataloging specimens, evenings preparing meals from the sustainable gardens today. He carefully pruned the luminescent fronds of a Centaurian sage plant, its tendrils reacting to his touch with subtle pulses of bioluminescence. From across the main biodome, he felt Vera's eyes upon him, a sensation he had grown increasingly aware of. "You have gentle hands," she observed, approaching with silent steps. "The nocturne blooms respond well to you." Talan nodded, trying to ignore the way his pulse quickened at her proximity. "They're sentient in their way. They can sense intention." Vera's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but the closest he'd seen. "As can I." She gestured toward the central compound. "Come, there's something I wish to show you." He followed her through corridors lined with living walls, where plants from 100 worlds created a tapestry of colors and textures. They entered a chamber he hadn't been permitted to access, before a library with ancient books and modern data crystals sharing. Space on shelves carved from what appeared to be petrified wood is the collected botanical knowledge of the Stellaris, Vieira explained, activating a holographic display that filled the room with 3-dimensional images of plant species. "My people were known as the cultivators of worlds before... ... She trailed off, her violet fingers trailing through the light projection of a flowering tree. "Before what?" Talon asked, venturing further than he had dared before. Vera's eyes darkened. "Before our extinction began." She turned to face him fully. "I am among the last of my kind, Talon. Once we numbered billions across 12 star systems. Now, perhaps a few hundred remain, scattered and hiding." "What happened?" "Progress," she said bitterly. "Our genetic makeup contains properties that allow us to commune with plant life, to accelerate growth, to heal biological systems. When this was discovered by the Galactic Confederation, we became valuable not as people, but as resources." Understanding dawned on Talon. "They harvested you. Those who survived fled or found protection through power and wealth, as I did." She deactivated the display. "I was once bonded to a high official in the Confederation. He promised protection. Instead, he betrayed my location to genetic harvesters after extracting what knowledge he could. I barely escaped with my life and what specimens I could salvage." The revelation stunned Talon. He had assumed Vera was the oppressor, not the oppressed. "Is that why you bought me? Because you know what it's like to be treated as property?" Before she could answer, alarms blared throughout the compound. Vera's expression hardened as she moved swiftly to a control panel. "Proximity alert? Raiders." She pulled up security feeds, showing 3 armed vessels approaching. "They've found me." Talon's instincts shifted from botanical researcher to survivor. "How many entrances to the compound?" 4. 2 are hidden. Security systems. Automated defenses, but nothing that will hold against a determined attack." Vera's fingers flew across the controls. "I need to destroy my research before they breach the perimeter." "No," Talon said firmly, surprising himself with his boldness. "We defend it. Together." Their eyes locked in a moment of evaluation. Finally, Vieira nodded. "The East Wing has manual defensive controls. Can you operate them? Point me to them." The next hour passed in a blur of strategic positioning and defensive preparations. When the raiders breached the outer perimeter, Talon was ready at the auxiliary control station. Through the security feeds, he watched as Vieira confronted the first wave of intruders, her movements fluid and lethal, yet a side of her he hadn't witnessed. She was magnificent and terrifying, her body illuminated by weapons fire as she utilized both technology and what appeared to be innate abilities plants around her responding to unspoken commands. Vines ensnaring attackers, but she was outnumbered. When a raider flanked her position with a high-powered energy weapon, Talon didn't hesitate. He overrode the defensive protocols, rerouting power to create a localized shield around her position, while simultaneously triggering a containment field that trapped the remaining attackers by the time the assault ended. The main entrance was in ruins. 3 sections of the biodome were compromised, and Vera stood amid the chaos, breathing heavily, a cut across her cheek leaving a trail of silvery blood. "You saved my life," she said, when they finally met in the central chamber. "Why? This could have been your opportunity to escape." Tylan tended to her wound with steady hands. "Escape to where? Besides, I've seen what happens to botanical collections when their caretakers are eliminated. Entire species lost forever." He applied a regenerative gel to her cheek. "I couldn't let that happen." Something shifted in Vera's expression, a softening, a recognition. "In my culture, saving a life creates a bond of obligation." Her hand rose to cover his, where it rested against her face. "I am in your debt, Talon." "Then consider my formal status changed," he said quietly. "I don't want to be your possession. What do you wish to be?" The question hung between them, laden with possibilities neither had dared acknowledge. "Your ally," he answered finally. "Perhaps in time, your friend?" That night, as they worked side by side to repair the damaged sections of the compound, the dynamic between them had fundamentally altered. Vera shared stories of her homeworld, its floating gardens and crystal cities now reduced to memory. Talon spoke of Earth in his research, his dreams of understanding the universal language of botanical life when the primary sun began to rise, casting rose-gold light across the horizon. Vera led him to a hidden chamber within her private quarters where a single plant grew in a crystalline vessel, a delicate, spiraling bloom with petals that shifted from deepest purple to translucent silver. "The heart bloom of Stellaris," she explained, "the last of its kind, like me. It blooms once a decade and grants its caretaker clarity of purpose." Her eyes met his. "It's beginning its cycle now. I believe it's responding to your presence." Talon watched in wonder as the bloom began to unfurl, releasing a soft luminescence. "What does it mean?" Vera's fingers intertwined with his, her touch sending an unexpected warmth through his body. "It means change is coming, Talon. For both of us." As the bloom opened fully, bathing them in gentle light, the last barriers of mistress and slave dissolved completely, replaced by something far more complex and fragile, the first tendrils of trust taking root between two souls, adrift in an indifferent cosmos. Forbidden Desires. The season of the twin moons brought torrential rains to Astralin, transforming the landscape into a shimmering watercolor of purples and blues. Inside the restored compound, Talon and Vera had fallen into a new rhythm, no longer owner and possession, but partners in maintaining the botanical sanctuary. With his status changed from slave to ally, Talon now occupied quarters in the residential wing, though the memory of Vera's touch when they had witnessed the heart blooms awakening frequently disrupted his sleep. One evening, as sheets of luminescent rain cascaded down the biodome's exterior, Talon found Vera in the meditation garden, her slender form perfectly still as she sat beside a pool of silvery water. Her eyes were closed, the ridges along her temples pulsing faintly with what he had come to recognize as an indication of deep focus. "Your presence is remarkably loud," she said without opening her eyes, a hint of amusement in her voice. Talon smiled. "Human thoughts, chaotic and persistent." "Join me," she invited, gesturing to the space beside her as he settled on the meditation stone. Their shoulders nearly touching, Vera finally opened her eyes. In the diffused light, the violet hue of her skin seemed to deepen, and the subtle patterns that traced her arms evolutionary remnants of her species' connection to plant life were more pronounced. "What troubles your thoughts tonight, Talon of Earth?" He considered deflecting, but found he couldn't lie to her. "You," he admitted. "The way things have changed between us." Vera's gaze remained on the pool's surface. "Change is the universe's only constant."
Yes.
That's not an answer. "No," she agreed softly. It isn't. She turned to face him fully. In my culture, bonds between individuals are rare and sacred. We do not give ourselves lightly. I'm not even of your species, Talon said, naming the unspoken barrier between them. That is complicated, Vera acknowledged. The Stellaris have always held themselves separate. It was part of our downfall or belief, and our own exceptionalism made us vulnerable. Her hand moved to rest lightly on his arm. But isolation has taught me many things, including the value of connection wherever it may be found. The touch of her fingers against his skin sent a current of awareness through Tylen's body. He was acutely conscious of her scent like night blooming. Jasmine with an alien undertone of spice, and the way her breath matched the rhythm of the rain. "What are we doing, Vera?" he asked, his voice rough with emotions he'd kept carefully contained. "Discovering," she whispered, her face now close enough that he could see flecks of silver in her eyes. "Evolving." The kiss, when it came, was tentative, a crossing of boundaries neither had acknowledged until this moment. Her lips were cooler than human temperature, but soft, tasting faintly of the starfruit they had harvested that morning. Tylen's hand rose to cradle her face, thumb tracing the delicate ridge along her temple, and she sighed against his mouth. A sound of surrender and discovery. When they separated, Vera's eyes were luminous with emotion. "This changes everything," she murmured, before Talon could respond. A violent tremor ran through his body, the first symptom of what would become a battle for his life. Within hours, he lay in the medical chamber, his human physiology ravaged by a pathogen native to Australan, one his earth-born immune system had no defenses against. For 3 days, Vera worked tirelessly, applying her species' unique biological knowledge to synthesize treatments. Talon drifted in and out of consciousness, aware sometimes of her cool hands on his burning skin, her voice murmuring in her native language as she used her abilities to channel healing energy through the medicinal plants she had prepared. On the 4th night, when the fever finally broke, he awoke to find her slumped beside his bed, exhausted from her efforts. Her hand was clasped around his, as if afraid to break the connection, even in sleep. With his free hand, he gently traced the curve of her cheek, marveling at the resilience and beauty of this being from another world who had fought so hard for his life. Vera stirred at his touch, eyes opening slowly. When she saw him conscious and alert, the relief that transformed her features was profound. "You stayed," he said simply. "I couldn't lose you." The admission seemed torn from her. "Not when I've only just found you." In that moment of raw vulnerability, something fundamental shifted between them. Talon drew her closer, his newly recovered strength surprising them both as he pulled her onto the bed beside him. Their lips met with fresh urgency, months of unspoken longing crystallizing into hunger. "This is forbidden," Vera whispered against his mouth, even as her body curved into his. "My people would consider it a final betrayal of our legacy." "Do you believe that?" Talon asked, his hands tracing the patterns along her arms, following them to where they disappeared beneath her garments. She shook her head slowly, her silver-violet hair cascading around them like a curtain separating their private universe from the rest of existence. "No. I believe legacy lives in connection, not isolation." Her fingers worked at the fastenings of her attire. "I believe in what we could create together." As layers fell away, Talon discovered that Vera's body was both alien and familiar. The same fundamental form as a human woman, but with subtle differences that made exploration an act of reverence and discovery. The patterns on her skin continued across her torso, converging at her heart in a starburst design that pulsed with her quickening heartbeat. Where their skin touched, a faint luminescence appeared, as if their biochemistries were engaging in their own form of communication. Their coming together was gentle, at first cautious with the newness of cross-species intimacy, but grew in intensity as they found their rhythm. Vera's natural telepathic abilities heightened the experience, creating feedback loops of pleasure and connection that transcended physical sensation. When release finally came, it was accompanied by a burst of psychic energy that temporarily linked their consciousness, allowing each a glimpse into the other's innermost being. Afterward, As they lay entwined in the dim light of the medical chamber, Vera traced patterns on Tylan's chest with her fingertip, her expression thoughtful. "What are you thinking?" he asked, still dazed from the intensity of their connection. "That the universe has a strange sense of humor," she replied. "I fled across galaxies, seeking safety and solitude, only to find salvation in a bond with a species I once considered primitive." Talan smiled, pressing his lips to her temple. "And I lost everything I valued, only to discover something far more precious in captivity. Errors." Vera's expression grew serious. "What happened between us sits, more than physical pleasure for my species. The connection we formed, it's the beginning of a bond that would be considered sacred and permanent among the Stellaris." "Are you warning me, or promising me?" Talan asked, his thumb caressing the curve of her hip. She studied his face with those ancient, knowing eyes. "Both, perhaps. My enemies still hunt me. The raiders who came before were merely the first. There will be others, drawn by rumors of a Stellaris, living in isolation, her genetic material ripe for harvesting. Then we face them together," he said with quiet determination. "I'm not leaving you, Vera. Whatever comes next, we face it as one." As if in answer, the distant sound of a perimeter alarm began to pulse through the compound. Vera tensed, then sighed against his skin. "It seems whatever comes next has arrived sooner than expected," she murmured, reluctantly pulling away from his embrace. "Are you strong enough to move?" Talan swung his legs over the side of the bed, testing his recovered strength. "Strong enough to fight for what matters." As they dressed quickly, preparing to face this new threat, their eyes met in silent communion. What had begun as captor and captive had transformed into something neither could have imagined. Bond transcending species and circumstance, forged in the crucible of shared isolation and blooming into an unexpected love that would soon be tested in fire. Hunters and prey the harvester's ships appeared on the scanner, their sleek forms cutting through space with predatory intent. "Not random raiders this time," Vera said, her violet fingers dancing across the control panel. "Genetic harvesters. They've tracked us." Working swiftly, they secured the heartbloom and critical specimens in portable containers. As explosions rocked the main compound, they escaped in Vera's stealth craft, a vessel built for speed rather than comfort. They barely cleared the atmosphere before enemy fire tagged their engine. "We've been hit," Vera announced grimly. "We need to land," she pointed, toward a small moon. Lumeris? Harsh, but habitable. Their landing was rough, the craft crippled, but intact. They trekked across treacherous terrain, razor-sharp rock formations, and digestive pools of a long-extinct organism, till finding shelter in a cave partially hidden by luminescent fungus. Inside their temporary haven, the heartbloom pulsed with unusual activity, its silver light intensifying when both Talan and Vera touched its container. "It's responding to our bond," Vera explained softly, "a connection that transcends normal limitations." That night, their lovemaking transcended the physical. Vera's telepathic abilities opened fully, allowing their consciousnesses to intertwine. Talan experienced fragments of her past Crystal City's betrayal, exile while she witnessed his memories of Earth, and the moment he first truly saw her as someone worthy of devotion. Afterward, Talan noticed the patterns on Vera's purple skin glowing more intensely, particularly the starburst over her heart. "The danger we face, combined with our bond, it's awakening ancestral traits," she explained, a new confidence in her voice. "The harvesters believe I am prey, but they've forgotten the Stellaris were once apex predators." Morning brought the sound of approaching ships. Instead of hiding, Vera prepared a botanical compound that she applied to their skin in ritual patterns. "It will mask our thermal signatures and enhance our abilities," she explained. "An ancient Stellaris battle preparation." Talan raised his eyebrows. "We're going to fight them?" Directly, Vera's smile was predatory. "Not fight, hunt." What followed was not a battle, but a methodical elimination. Enhanced by the botanical compound, Talan moved with newfound agility, while Vera seemed to blend with shadows, sometimes appearing to dissolve into mist before reforming elsewhere. They separated the hunting party, neutralizing them one by one until the survivors retreated in disarray. As the last shuttle lifted off, they stood together on a cliff overlooking the valley, the wind playing with their hair. "They'll return with reinforcements," Talon observed. "Yes," Vera agreed, turning to face him. In the sunset light, the patterns on her skin gleamed like constellations. "But we won't be here." She drew him close, their foreheads touching in their intimate gesture. "For the first time in my exile, I'm not merely running from something." Her fingers intertwined with his. "I'm running toward something, a future. With you." The Nexus asteroid belt swarmed with activity as Vera's repaired craft slipped between larger vessels, approaching a secluded docking bay. 3 cycles had passed since their escape from Lumeris. Both had changed. Vera's dormant stellarist traits had fully manifested, granting her limited precognition and control over the luminescent patterns on her purple skin. Tylan's constant exposure to the heartbloom had triggered adaptations in his human physiology, including enhanced regenerative abilities and sensitivity to botanical networks. Disguised as traders, they met with Nearith, a 4-armed Circean who owed Vera a life debt. "Your faces are on every bounty channel, from here to the core worlds," Nearith hissed as they negotiated passage to the lawless fringe territories. Their meeting was interrupted when genetic enforcement officers entered the cantina, deploying scanning drones. One locked onto Vera, triggering alarms. They fought their way to a service corridor, but Vera took a blast to her shoulder. Trapped between pursuers, they made a desperate choice. "The heartbloom," Vera said, pain evident in her voice. "It's our only chance." Talon removed the container. The bloom inside had matured fully, its petals shimmering with barely contained energy. "Focus on our bond," Vera instructed, as they placed their hands on the container. "On what we've become together." As pursuers closed in, they reached mentally for the heartbloom. It responded with surging power that resonated with Vera's patterns and Tylan's altered cells. Reality folded around them, space and time becoming malleable when the light faded. They stood beside a blue lake on an uncharted world, surrounded by silver-leaved singing trees beneath a lavender sky. They named their sanctuary Nova Stellaris and built a home near the singing forest. The heartbloom took root in their garden, thriving in this pristine environment. One evening, as twin suns set, Vera presented Talon with a circlet containing her genetic material, bonded with elements from their new world. "This represents what I am and what I've become through loving you." In return, he gave her a pendant containing an earth seed preserved alongside a heartbloom petal. "My past and our future." As they exchanged these tokens, the patterns on Vera's skin brightened, and similar patterns manifested on Tylan's arms, glowing blue, where hers shone violet. "The transformation is complete," she whispered in wonder. "You're neither human nor Stellaris now. We are something new, together." That night, the heartbloom released a pulse of silver light that rippled across the landscape, awakening a planet-wide network that acknowledged them not as intruders but as caretakers. What had begun in the cruel transaction of a slave market had blossomed into something unprecedented, a bond that defied categorization and a future limited only by the horizons they chose to explore together. The chains that had once defined them had become the roots from which an entirely new existence had grown. True freedom, they discovered, was never about the absence of bonds, but about choosing the ones worth keeping.